I think it's important to recognize the self-cultivation and discipline that comes with endeavoring to be a compassionate person. Aldous Huxley said, quote, "There's only one corner of the universe you can be certain of improving, and that's your own self," unquote. This just reminds me of how changed I have become by choosing to act in opposition to my nature or my spontaneous urge in order to be a more compassionate person. And I'm an impulsive person. I'm higher on the spectrum of people who are extremely impulsive, I should say. I don't know where I fall into that. But a lot of self-cultivation is training yourself to get one step ahead of impulsive thoughts and potential acts. And I used compassion as a guidepost, something to tether to, so that you can use it in various situations. I'm going to give you a quick example of a time when this cultivation rose to the surface and had a large impact on my life. When I was store manager at Shoppers Drug Mart, I'd been there for 3 years. I'd been high performing. I'd turned a store that was not profitable for 8 years in a row into a profitable business 3 years in a row. And my staff enjoyed my management style and how I cared for them and trained them and spent time with them. And I had a child under complications, and there was a lot of health problems for him and my wife and even myself during that time period of those 3 years. And I did my best to perform, which I believe I succeeded in. But my boss, who owned the business, was also going through having 2 children, and she started at the business the same time I did, so she took over the store, and together we achieved those high results. But due to circumstances in her life, the store seemed to turn on her, and the pressure was getting to be too much, maybe for both of us. And our relationship took a turn, and I became the target of her in general. And this eventually got to a point where I could no longer work there anymore, because I felt as though it was a toxic environment, and there was pretty terrible things happening directed at me, which made me feel very uncomfortable and attacked and targeted. So I left, and I drove home knowing that I wasn't going to be going back to that place. And I pulled in my driveway, and it was just peak frustration and anger, all these emotions that I tried to cultivate out of myself. And I think I'd been pretty successful, because one of the things people note about me is that I'm calm, and in situations where most people would rear their emotions in a negative way, I was able to control mine and aim them towards things like patience and kindness and compassion. And as I pulled into my driveway and I was feeling these intense negative emotions, I remembered the pathway that I had carved so deeply that was compassion. And I realized that I had to love her too. The person who, as far as I could think, had hurt me the most anybody had ever hurt me, because I had everything just going so well, and I was so proud of how hard I had worked. And she was destroying that, and she had succeeded in destroying it. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew that I was going to love her too, and have compassion for her, and see things from her perspective, and understand. I do know, because I'd been living pretty close beside her during those 3 years, that she went through some very challenging things in her personal life and at work. And I wept, I cried, because the exercise of feeling compassion against all odds was intoxicating. And I felt a similar feeling that I did the day I gave my heart to Jesus and asked him to open my eyes, open my heart's eyes, and give me that ability to love my enemy like I love myself. More, even. And that's compassion. You have to cultivate it and nurture it so that it can be there to catch you when you're overwhelmed with your human nature. Because many people could justify those angry, resentful feelings that I had in that moment, in those circumstances. And some people wouldn't even blame me for still harboring them and holding on to them. But it was so much better for me to be able to deal with it the way I did. And genuinely convince myself that I wish the best for her and her family. And I offer forgiveness so that we can move on and untangle ourselves from the unfortunate events that we shared. I have another quote here. I didn't expect this to be this long, but I've also been holding back the elastic for a very long time, building up a lot of tension. So here's a quote from Bertrand Russell, who I understand had some unfortunate ideas of how to deal with overpopulation and how there's some eugenicist type of theory, I believe, that he proposed. Anyways, this quote, viewed separate from some of Bertrand's other achievements, I think speaks well to what I think is possible and what Bertrand thinks is possible. Quote, "I allow myself to hope that the world will emerge from its present troubles, that it will one day learn to give the direction of its affairs, not to cruel swindlers and scoundrels, but to men possessed of wisdom and courage. I see before me a shining vision, a world where none are hungry, where few are ill, where work is pleasant and not excessive, where kindly feeling is common, and where minds released from fear create delight for eye, ear, and heart. I do not say this is impossible. It may not be done tomorrow, but it could be done in 1,000 years, if only humanity would bend their minds to the achievement of the kind of happiness that should be distinctive of man." End quote. I want to note that I've been reading quotes and getting inspiration from original thoughts that I recorded in a notebook that I carried with me while taking Compassionate Communities the first two times. And I think it's still relevant and worth sharing. So here we go. This is actually an original thought. My sister was suffering physical pain, and I know quite a few people who suffer persistent physical pain. And this is me musing about how difficult it is to live with pain and suffering of any type and still act good to those around you and within your own story. So here we go. On pain, and how is this holy? The measure of a holy being is how they cope with extreme pain of the body, heart, and mind. If one can remain pious and kind in the face of such torment, mark them as holy and worthy of remark, for they have forged a union with divinity which surmounts the highest of aims. Bless and keep those who can relinquish pain to part of the plan. They are the true masters of transfiguration. It is the feat of holy people to turn suffrage into grace. While the rest of us writhe and gnash our teeth in protest of the profanity of suffering, they fall at the feet called perfect and eat the pain. The holy lap up the suffrage, all the while praising the perfection of things beheld. They are so free. They have faith-fueled freedom. Hope and faith are hard sought in the blinding grips of searing pain. Blessed are those who suffer and act compassionately. In order to define compassion, I know this is Reflection Journal 1 and we're getting long-winded here, but I want to expand upon why I think compassion is not natural in the natural world. It is phenomenal. Logical, I think it does show up sometimes in cross-species relationships. You see it pop up once in a while. And I think those are individuals engaging with particular social opportunities in ways that are unexpected, unpredictable. But in general, human beings and all other creatures of nature are in a battle for survival. And compassion does not suit that battle. If we have one human being in the wilderness by themselves, or even a family working together, or a small community, a small tribe of 150, they are in battle with the natural world, maybe even each other competitively, and certainly other bands or groups nearby that are competing for resources and the ability to sustain themselves and stay alive. And a lot of our natural tendencies are present due to those circumstances. And I think compassion is an invention that works in small communities to keep people cooperating and not straying too far away from agreed upon ethical social standards and norms which protect safety and freedom and all kinds of justice-y things that we don't need to get into. I think nature would eat us alive. We're not going to get compassion from nature. We might happen upon a tree filled with delicious fruit, and that might save us in a time when we were just about to perish from hunger. But that nature did not provide for that out of compassion. You got lucky. You happened upon it. And I think that's how compassion is. That we've been able to take this tendency to do that within small groups and expand upon it now that we're interconnected geographically, pretty well universally. And some of us have the means to destroy each other, the press of a button. Destroy everyone at the press of a button. So once again, that scaffolding, that slot exists for us to slide compassion into. The more of us who do that and exercise that innate human tribal mechanism, the better chance we have of not allowing the few to take advantage in the pursuit of power or whatever other experience they're going for. I want to talk about God as nature for a second. I can't remember which philosopher it was. I'm going to look it up right now. It was Baruch Spinoza who envisioned God as the world, as nature. I suppose you can include meteors and solar systems and galaxies and all that stuff too. But as it pertains to everyday life, nature. The information that allows us to exist and interact with our surroundings. Here's more from my journal that is me trying to explain a way I can imagine God and a way that I can explain the problem of evil, because I've encountered it in some form of the spectrum, and it certainly exists. And I believe, once again, it comes down to free will and choice. And some of us learn that you can manipulate people's natural tendencies and even the laws of nature in your favor if you are self-serving and lack the type of conscience that can feel pain that we sometimes call guilt. This is from my journal. My God painted the painter painting the painting and provided for a perfectly blank canvas of natural laws to spill out our storied existence upon. My God loves the artists and the art. My God loves the story and the characters, good and bad. My God loves the tragedy and the ideal. The Romanian-born American writer Elie Wiesel said, quote, "The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness, it's indifference. The opposite of faith is not heresy, it's indifference. And the opposite of life is not death, it's indifference. The path to love is caring. Good caretakers might be blessed by becoming closest to grasping the idea of what it might be like to love everything like my God does. Caretaking to me is simply paying care-filled attention to what is before you and acting accordingly to your care-filled understanding of the situation as it unfolds. Perceiving evil. A great freedom arises after realizing the unrestricted love and expectance of a God like I have conceived. Aleister Crowley must have had a similar revelation when he channeled the concept of do as thou willst is the whole of the law in 1924. This suggests to me that to please God is less restrictive, as some traditions might stress. The problem of evil is only a problem to those of us who suffer coexistence with the fruits of evil labor. Appreciation for novelty requires full spectrum palettes and complete possibilities. This is the artistic free will of the living aware of the possible. I accept my God as cool with whatever. and find myself facing the possible. I best get busy painting. But personally, I prefer the lovely, the peaceful, and the whimsical. As life, including the curated approaches me, these are my comfort zones. Yet distant art safely approaches the profane. In the distance, art and life can often be transfixed by less lovely, peaceful, and whimsical things. I've enjoyed watching shows like Spartacus and Vikings. Shows like these artistically display the common aspects of humanity which I would prefer to manifest far away from me and my loved ones. Something about the good, the bad, and the ugly makes the whole thing. I kind of just want to put my old notes from this course to bed, so that I can pursue the new version of the course from a novel place. I respect the work and the steps that I made in previous attempts at this course, and I actually don't feel like a failure in either of those courses, because I still had a learning journey, even though it didn't culminate into something that I could share with you, unfortunately, due to life. I want to finish this reflection by talking about identity. I think it's how we identify that manifests how we act in our world around us, and whether we are able to cultivate these compassionate or grace-filled feelings towards everything else around us. So this will be the last bit of my journal entry to share with you. Identify or else. Fine. I am one. A tendril of the greater whole. A soul. Energy enmeshed in cosmic fabric. A sense-abled extension of the divine essence. A facet of all existence, made to perceive itself as separate from the all. What else? Well, furthermore, I am offspring of the sun, the well of vitality, a breather of air, dependent on the essence of water, a child of human parents, a student and practitioner of life. I am alive. I am sensual. I pursue pleasure and avoid pain. I am creative, a creator, an instrument, a force for change. I am a participant. I am a victim of authority. I have been conceived, possessed, labeled, groomed, influenced, persuaded, identified, segregated. I am socialized. I am, have been, will be a character. What further drama befalls me also becomes me, yet still I am one.